So let's see, it's 5 o'clock. So back in the COVID days, or before the COVID days, we used to meet down in Sereno Valley, which is kind of down in the heart of San Diego. And it was impossible to get out of, but easy to get to because the traffic had reversed. And just to allow people time to get to the users group, we kind of reverse the order of a users group. And that is, we start off with opening discussions and just question and answers and just saying hello to everybody else. This is a picture of the Pacific Ocean this afternoon. As I was commuting home, I always thought this is Beacons Beach in Encinitas. I always take a picture of it. So that's what it looked like about 4 hours ago. Tonight, we're going to be discussing how to construct a project structure. And that is, I've got this project, and how do I set it all up? So we'll review those techniques on how to get a project running. So let's dive into project structure. I'm by all means not an expert at project structures in Onshape. I'm trying to get there. There's just so much more in Onshape to be able to control a project that trying to get my head around, trying to figure out how it all works in the big space. I was pretty good at it back in the old systems because it was fairly limited on how you put it together. I did work with a lot of companies for 20 years trying to develop methodologies for controlling project structures. There is one thing that is definitely the case, and that is those companies that spend the time to put together a project structure before they turn all their engineers onto it, they do a lot better. After about 2-3 years, if you just have a bunch of engineers starting to work on assemblies and you think that they're going to go together, after about 2 or 3 years, things get tangled up. You end up having half your engineers fixing what the first round did, and it works a lot better. That's kind of something that I wanted to start talking about and start putting these structures together so that we can actually work and develop better products. As an overview, there's not one structure works for every company, and not one structure works for everything that you're designing. And up on the screen, I'm showing kind of a simple structure here. This could be done in a part studio. I don't know that you'd really need an assembly to actually build this part. Seems to me like 50% of the people that are using Onshape have done everything inside of a part studio because it's easy, you can get the relationships easily, and it's just a fast way to get up and running. Not a lot of people do CAD all the time. They got to get things done, and they're casual users. Once again, this is the part studio. As things grow, though, the part studio starts losing gas, and you got to start having a little bit more going on. We'll take a look at this one. I just thought this was a cool model. This isn't that sophisticated because a lot of this stuff is instanced around. And so you're going to start off in a part studio. Eventually, you're going to build up, and you're going to start building up assemblies. Okay, one of the problems with designing all of your stuff in a part studio is there's no bill of materials. So at a minimum, you got to figure out, okay, here's my part studio. I got to get it into the assembly so that I can get a bill of materials out of it. Okay. One step beyond that is now I got a robotics cell. And if you put together your datums properly, you can start putting your robotic cells, and you can start working with actually organizing your sub-assemblies and how your sub-assemblies are all going to go together. Once again, this is one guy doing it, okay? But that's not a very big assembly. This is what I'm looking for. I want every one of those robots to be in some type of a CAD representation. That's my top level. And I want to be able to develop some type of a model that allows me to see the factory layout and how it's all going to be put together. Once you get to this layer over here on the right-hand side, if you don't have a structure for what that top looks like and how the sub-assemblies are put together, it's never going to come together. And you can build stuff like this if you organize it and if you put it together. So this is where we're at. Not one size fits everything. You kind of have to build up, okay? If you don't have a structure here, you'll never get this done. If you don't have a structure here, it's okay. And then if you go down here, having a project structure becomes less important. If all you're doing is doing hobby shop stuff, then having a structure probably isn't that important. It's better, it's a lot easier. So let's get going. One of the things that I found interesting when I was poking through the public space is I actually looked up different people's public stuff. I hope I don't upset any of them, but the first one was Chris. You can figure out who did it because you just look in the history and it'll say what their name is, and you kind of understand who they are. One of the things that I found really interesting here are these tabs along the bottom. Parts, assemblies, drawings. I didn't do this. Everybody's doing this. So basically they're taking their parts, they're putting it in a folder called parts, they're taking their assemblies, putting them in the assemblies, and they have a drawing folder. And then the other nice thing is that over here on the left-hand side, this is my top level assembly. This is my entry point into my project structure. Let me take a look at my notes because this guy did a lot of really good stuff. One of the things that I would ask is define your thumbnail sketch, right? So let's say that I'm working on this huge robot and the last thing I was working on was the bolt. Well, Onshape's going to remember that bolt and that's what it assigns to your robotic system. I'm scanning through the document selector and it says robotic work cell, but all I see is a bolt. So one of the first things that you should do, and very few people are doing this, is that you need to select what you want to have show up. And then I don't care what you do, what the representation of the part that you're working on does show up as this image right here. So you need to lock that down. The other thing that I noticed about what Chris was doing is he has an archive folder here. And a lot of people will do that because they don't want to get rid of what they've worked on in the past. This is kind of a clever way to do it, is to kind of put it all inside of a folder and then forget about it. The problem is that next time there's going to be an archive 2, archive 3, archive 4. Don't do that, okay? That's what this is for over here. Okay, so basically you want to version it. So if you're going to have a design evolve, don't put it inside of an archive folder. What you should do instead is to go ahead, version it, and then if you don't want to use any of the stuff in the past, just delete it. It doesn't go away, it comes back. So instead of archive right here, this should have just been version 1. This looks pretty good. And move on from there, okay? Another thing that I've noticed with this particular design is that he is using linked documents. So that's cool. So the nice thing about it is he made the electronic enclosure public, but he also made his library public, so I can see that one too. But this is something that I'm not quite sure about. I'm still wrapping my head around this. He actually has a library of all of his fasteners. And he's actually representing them in various parts inside of the inside of a document. I'm not so sure this is an effective way to actually do a parts library. First off, Onshape has one. The second one is you usually get them from McMaster Carr. So I don't know that this is the most effective way to actually generate a library part or a series of library parts.
Pretty sure this is a throwback before the Onshape library.
Yeah, I know a lot of guys are doing this. And like I say, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, but it just doesn't feel comfortable to me right now, how you set this up.
What I'd really like, Bill, is I'd like to be able to create my own library using the Onshape architecture.
And then
we want, Bruce, that's what we want to get to. That was the intent. So
yes. Yeah.
Yeah, we're filling out McMaster Carr part numbers inside of the Onshape library. So one of the things that's really nice about what Chris did, if you're going to do it in an assembly, the first thing you do is you start working your bill of materials. So if I'm actually designing something, I'm going to end up buying it. So the time to start your bill of materials is your first sketch, your first feature, and you got to understand this bill of materials. It's coming. Last thing you want to do is finish your design and then go fix this thing, because this is going to dictate, do I use composite parts? Do I use parts? Do I put stuff inside of sub-assemblies? How am I actually going to handle what gets listed inside of the bill of materials? So in this, Chris did a great job with actually putting this together. Let's see if I've missed anything. This is just all in one document with the library. And I think that people have done a pretty good job with assemblies inside of Onshape. I think that people have done a pretty good job of putting parts inside of part studios in Onshape. I think the next final frontier is how many documents are we going to create and generate, and how do we manage those? When you reference something from another document, it's under version control, and we'll go over that a little bit more. But this is something new in CAD, and that is documents and how do they control one. Most people put everything inside of one document. Everything that's in the public domain, it's all going inside of a public document. This is just really a cool model, so I'm showing it. He did instance them all. So there really isn't a whole lot to this. All of this stuff is built up inside of Onshape. I thought that he imported it from a different CAD system, but these all are feature related. There really isn't any bill of materials. I get it. You know, if you're a hobbyist and you're just throwing something together, you don't care about it. But if in real life, you got to worry about the bill of materials and how I'm actually going to order this thing. You see, this is a generic template. My recommendation, if you're going to start putting together a project, you're going to start thinking of that bill of materials right from the get-go and just have it evolve with the actual project itself.
Can I ask a question, Bill?
I'm sorry?
Bill, can I ask a question? Do you use the tab manager, up the left-hand side?
I don't. And only when I have to do difficult things, because I can do multi-selects and I can drag them and drop them a lot better. But I don't use this that much, only when I'm having to do housekeeping and cleaning things up. I typically run along the side. Bruce, when you share your screen, you're going to show me why I should be using this all the time.
Yeah, okay, I will.
This is much more powerful than this here. I mean, if you're trying to clean up your structure using the tabs below, you'll go absolutely nuts. And if I'm trying to clean up a project, Bruce, this is when I'll open this up. But on the day-to-day stuff where I'm just creating parts, I'll just drag them into the folder, or I'll construct sub-assemblies. I typically just drag along here and get this stuff working.
Yeah, the filtering though, you don't get if you don't use the tab manager, there's a lot of power you're not taking advantage of.
Yeah, that's probably something I should start doing. I do like one of the things about his assembly is that there really is no significance to the origin in an assembly and Onshape. I mean, really, things can just move around. You don't really care where they are relative to the origin, but older systems had them, and I'm still working with the actual origin in the center. So I thought that was good. You do have to practice at getting your parts inside of the origin and working on them. That to me was a thumbs up. A lot of people are doing that. There's no motion inside of this assembly. That's too bad. It would be nice to see it actually move. And then if you're going to do that, you should actually have step 1, step 2, step 3, so I could literally see how this thing's going to walk across the floor. The other thing that I thought was interesting is he actually has this arena. And I was sitting here trying to figure out, well, what is this project? To me, I probably would have started with the arena, and then I would have put the robot inside of the arena. And this is kind of your top-down approach. How are you going to structure your project? In the way that he actually has this set up, he has a robot within an arena in it, and that to me seems backwards. These are the things that I'd like to get straightened out from the beginning of the project, is that, okay, this is in a room, I got an arena, and it's going to have a robot inside of it. And one guy, he's probably just doing this as more of a hobby than anything else. I would be honest with you, I don't know what he's actually doing. I'm trying to figure out what he's doing here. And then this is a really cool model that Glenn put together. Let's just go through this. Once again, look at this. I haven't messed with any of this stuff. Oh, my biggest pet peeve is that this belonged over here. And to me, I read left to right. And it's a small thing, but tell me how to get in. I mean, that was one of the things that I liked the best about PDM Works, is that in their tree, they would organize it, and I knew where the top was, and I knew where the sub-assemblies were. And it's a real drag that you don't know what the entry point is to a large data structure, and you don't know how to navigate it. And it's sometimes very difficult as this stuff builds up. Kind of like the top level assembly being over here. And I do the same thing. A lot of times it's just folders as to what I'm working on. And a lot of people are doing that. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing, just a lot of people are doing it. This one's a really cool model because he's got all the kinematics inside of here. And this is one of the things that excites me the most about Onshape, is that I only have 12 mate connectors. How did I get all the robotic stuff inside of that? Well, the answer to that question is, if we go over here and we start looking at his structure, he has this structure here. He puts the base in it, and then he calls up another structure from a document. So this is a link document, and when you do a link document, it calls up the version. And then inside of the version, if you scroll all the way down, it has its mates associated with the robot. And the thing that I like about it is that Onshape will inherit the mates as it goes up. You can have a robot in your library, you can drag it into a certain level assembly, and it will work in that next level up assembly. And then you can take that assembly and you can drag it into another upper level, and the robot still frickin' works. And this is one of the benefits. This is why I like working on these robotic work cells. And I've been working with some of these robotic work cells. This is a pretty minor assembly. There's not much to it. This could, look, if you do automation, you're not going to have 2 robots and 2 little conveyors. There's going to be a room full of these, and it's going to be a process. You're going to start with incoming products. You're going to build one assembly, then you're going to put that assembly into something else. You're going to put there's going to end up being 30 or 40 of these things. And right now, a lot of people are designing one of them, another engineer is going to design another one, and eventually those 2 have to come together. And that's going to be a problem. Had you started it with, let's look at the room and let's start actually defining boxes is really all you need, and your datums, you know what, let's just go over some of this stuff here. There's definitely a way to put together a project, and I'm going to go through how I put together a project. This guy has good tab orders. The nice thing about it is he took his robots and his grippers, and they are versioned in different documents. So this particular robotic cell consists of a minimum of 3 documents. This guy is busting out, okay? He's got 3 documents. So this is good. I'd like to see more of this going on. Let's just talk about the basic structure, and then I'm going to hand it over to Bill Dull so that he can explain his new product. A project, basically there's a folder, and you're going to have a lot of documents inside of it, and you're going to have assemblies, you're going to have part studios, and with those part studios you're going to have parts. And these are the basic structure. I would venture to say that that is not a structural element. And the reason why I say that is because this top up here, it shouldn't be a folder. This top should be a document. Now, I don't have a problem with folders containing all my top level documents so that I can find them a little bit easier. But I really think that these 4 parts right here are going to dictate the structure and how all of this works. So how do you get started with actually architecting a structure? The first thing, this is a drawing tree from a long time ago, before we even had CAD. And we always started projects this way. And I think it's still relevant today. Typically, I always want to think, well, what am I trying to control? If I'm making an automated work assembly line, I'm going to start with the room. The problem with the robotic cell that you just saw, where are the electronics? If you don't think the electronics is a huge cabinet full of stuff, where are you going to put that? And then the robotic cell shows up, you don't have the power there for it. And these are the things that I'm trying to control. So to me, I'm trying to define, I got a robot, I got to have the powered electronics associated with it. I would even go and say, okay, here's a rectangle, this is the room, and then I would actually map where the product goes through, and I would make those my datums. And then what I could do, these are my second layer assemblies. These are probably going to be the robotic cells, and I can pass the datum down into that cell, into this cell, into this cell. And now I've got all of these cells being controlled by my top layer. If there's a change that comes along, I change this, this changes. And I can literally control the entire room, as opposed to having a bunch of guys design a bunch of assemblies and then you think they're all going to come together in a room. If you did it that way, more than likely you would show up in the room and there's a post in the middle of the room that nobody knew about, and you're going to have a nightmare of a time trying to get this robotic automation piece of equipment to run properly because you didn't start from the top. So the first thing you want to do when you get started with project structure is figure out what's it encompassing. We put a wafer processing plant inside of SolidWorks back in 1999 when they first started configurations. It was funny because we were going to sell them SolidWorks and they said, oh, we'll never figure that out. You guys do it. And I said, no, I don't want to do that. And one of my sales guys said, let's do it. So we hired 6 engineers and we architected it. And the first thing we did was, what's our top level assembly? There are 3 buildings. So we actually designed all 3 buildings and that was our top. Inside of the buildings, we actually broke it up into rooms and all of these were sub-assemblies. The cool thing of it is we had 6 engineers. None of them had to fix what the other people were doing. So this stuff will grow if you architect it and put it out. Nobody should be starting with a blank file, okay? You architect this, you put it together, you drop your datums down into these sub-assemblies, and I'm gonna hand you an assembly or a part studio with your datums in it. And I'm gonna give you a box, stay out of this box. Or stay within this box, stay out of that box. And these are all the things that would transfer down into these various sub-assemblies. When you start looking at this stuff, I mean, this tree tells a lot. This part should never talk to that part. You will never create a reference across that. At least in our structures that we put together, that was not allowed. And that keeps well, it's just chaotic. You need to keep your references. That's why nobody likes in context, because nobody can control the referencing scheme and everything blows up and everything's tied together like a knot. But if you actually start architecting it, starting to explain to people what's going on, there isn't a guy that actually ties over to this part. The only way that that can happen is that it comes up to this assembly, it goes over, and it comes back down this way. And yeah, this takes an admin of some type that can actually make that happen. You have to elect, you have to ask, hey, I have to make a reference to that part. Of course, I do all in context. Bradley Solon next in December is going to show you how he's going to do it all with a part studio. Same idea though. It was funny because his ideas are the same as mine and on how you put together a structure. My assembly structures are a little bit larger than his. The other thing that you need to do is you need to understand what your deliverables are. So you start with your overall, what am I trying to control? You got to get your second layer down, your assemblies down, and even your third layer assemblies. And then after a while, I get to a point where I just hand it off to an engineer. I don't care how you do it, but you cannot make an association to somebody else's without talking to me. When you start doing something like that, when we built it, we had 8 people working on this wafer processing plant. It was cool because I could go into somebody else's assembly and I knew how it was put together. And things like that really help when you're trying to get things done quickly. Very rarely do you go into a company and you say, how do you put stuff together? And a lot of people leave it up to the engineers. And I'm not so sure that's the best way to do it. I would say a better way to do it is to have a simple standard. We had a sheet of paper, front and back. You learned it, and then you could work on the project structure. That's my 2 cents worth. I'm going to step down off of the soapbox. And this is open. I would like to hear how other people are going to control their top level assemblies and their project structures and how to put it together. Onshape is going to be a lot of fun because we didn't have a lot of the headaches that we did with SolidWorks. I mean, anybody can go make these assignments anytime they want to. But I think it's going to take discipline. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a lot of a chaotic mess. A little bit of structure goes a long ways. Bill, I'm queuing you up. Are you ready?
I'm ready. So, as Bill mentioned before, I was the creator of PDM-Works, so anybody who's used that in the past probably knows that it was a very simple PDM product. The goal there was, hey, there's like a couple dozen products out there to manage PDM data for SolidWorks, and they all cost, hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not millions. They took 6 months to a year to implement. So my goal with PDMWorks was just create something simple, something that does 80% of what everybody needs, and people can be up and running within a day or two. So tried to use the same thing here with OneIPM. Anybody who's used a tool like Jira or Trello or something like that for managing projects, this might look a little familiar. But a big difference is this is actually integrated right into the CAD environment. So engineers don't have to hop out of Onshape into another tool, learn how to use that tool, and try to figure out how to connect all this stuff together. This is built right inside of Onshape. And the other thing I tried to tackle with OneIPM was I always found it a little confusing. The structure of Onshape, where you've got the documents, which always kind of felt like projects to me. And then inside of those, you had things like Pot Studios that had pots in them, you had assemblies, and so on. And especially if I was picking up work somebody else had done, trying to navigate through that, it took me quite a bit of time. So I tried to solve that issue also, and make this something that not only a hardcore CAD user could use, but maybe other people in your company who are non-CAD users, something for them to come in and actually find their way around Onshape and through some of these documents. And maybe a finance guy has to go out and buy some tooling, make it easy for them to kind of browse through and find what they're looking for. So right now, OneIPM is in invite-only beta. You can find out more about it by going to oneipm.com. There's a couple of videos here, some of the highlights of the features. If you click on Get Started, you can then select this link here so that you can become a beta tester. Beta is free. The final price is not determined yet, but it'll be in beta for a little while, and it is free. And hopefully some of you will be interested in trying this out. So if you click that, it's basically just an email link. Send me the email address that you're using for Onshape, and I'll add you to the beta list right away. Once you're in that list, you come to the store, you select the data management section, you'll find OneIPM in here. You'll click on it, a little bit more info about the product, and over here you can select it to add it to Onshape. Once it's added to Onshape, if you go into a document and add it as a tab here, you can actually click there and see the product here. One of the cool things is it also works outside of Onshape. So once you've signed up, you can come to a browser and just go to oneipm.com/app, and you can run the app over here. So for now, I'm going to run it outside of Onshape so that we can kind of look at the two side by side. And that'll become more apparent when I get into the document section. So the first thing you're given here is a dashboard, which gives you an overview of all your projects and your tasks that you have assigned to you. So I can see right now I've got 18 open tasks, 7 of them I do now, and so on. Tasks can be associated with documents. So these here documents have tasks assigned to them, and we'll get more into that in a moment. I can drill down into any one of these and say, geez, I have 3 at risk. Let me look at those. Here are the 3 tasks. Right now, I'm just looking at them in a task list showing these are all the tasks that are at risk, but they could be in different projects. So I could right-click on one and say, go to that project. And here is that project. And here's that task we're just looking at. So if you look at the top here, this is like a breadcrumb. So it shows right now we're in Bill's Engineering, Engine Redesign. If I just select Bill's Engineering, I go back to my to my project view. So there's 2 types of projects. One is my personal project. So those are things that just I own, nobody else can see. So those could be things like maybe I need to hire a new engineer. I don't need to involve everybody in the company in that, or my own personal to-do list or so on. And then there's my company. These are projects for my company. You see there's some nice visual cues here, like this project is 33% complete. There's 8 open tasks. 4 of those are mine. 4 do now, 1 of which is mine. And if you hover over it, it'll tell you those are my tasks or that's all tasks, and so on. Then when I click into this, I get back to where I was a moment ago. There's basically just 4 stages it can be in a task. It can be in backlog, to do, in progress, or done. By default, backlog is hidden, but there's a visual cue up there that says it's 3 items in backlog. So at any point I can go over there and say, geez, let me take this. And I actually we should do that in this sprint. If we're doing sprints, for example, let me pull that over here and put it in to do. In a task, it's pretty simple. There's the project it's assigned to. Clicking on it, you can move it to any particular project you want. And you notice the red asterisks there for the project and description. Those are the only 2 things that are required. Everything else you can do if you choose. So there's comments. You can have a full history about this task. There's a history about every change that's happened on this particular task. I can, say I'm 65% done on this one. I can change it to none because it's not a high risk. You notice that went to blue now instead of before it was red because it's a high risk. So a lot of visual cues there. Medium, we'll just make it none. I can change the assignment, priorities, estimate, due by date, any of this. Again, you don't have to get burdened with all of this because your only things that you need to put in is the description and the project. And you notice this updated here, and now it's just blue, and it's showing me approximately how far along it is. So again, I said this is kind of a breadcrumb showing you where you are. Down at the bottom here, the 3 main sections. So you've got the dashboard, which we already saw, and that you can drill into, as we saw. You've got the task manager, and this is broken down into 2 sections, my projects or my company projects. And then we've got this other section here called documents. And this is where we can look side by side with Onshape. So you notice at first it looks a heck of a lot like Onshape. This was on purpose, right? I wanted to have that familiar look, but you'll see as I start drilling in how it's very different. So it's got a nice slider here at the top. So if you have a lot of documents here, you can make them smaller. You can make your thumbnails bigger. It's very dynamic. I can change it to a list. One of the cool things here is as I'm looking at this list, I can make modifications to this. I can even rename the documents. When I drill down into a document, so we'll do this in Onshape. So we go into that document, and right off the bat now I'm in CAD, right? And I got to figure out my way through here. So I've got all these sub-assemblies down here, and I'm sure if I keep going, there's pot studios and so on. If I double click over here into that same document, so you see it's a much different view. So now I can see all of my sub-assemblies or assemblies. I can see all of the parts. So no matter what pot studios they're in, I just show you all of the parts here. But you can go down below and there are pot studios, drawings, and here's all the tasks that are associated with this particular document. And tasks can be associated with a document or a pot studio, an assembly, or a particular part. So I can right click on any one of these and say create a new task. I can do it on a drawing or anything. You notice I can also open up in Onshape any one of these. I can browse into them, which I'll show you a little bit more in a moment. So here I'm going to take the main assembly and dig down into that one. So this one is going to be broken down into sub-assemblies and parts. And there are quantities here, so you see there's 2 of this pack nut in this particular assembly. Again, we've got this nice list view. Here, I can put things in. So I also can reorder columns. I can come in here and maybe I don't want the part number column. So I can turn that one off. And I can go into a bill of material type view. So this is indented, so that you can see the indentation here. If I come in here, let's see. Oh. So there's a custom property called My Cost. That particular property, I can tell in Onshape that it's a floating variable, so it's numeric. So because I know that it's numeric, what I'm going to do when you're in this BOM type view is I know what all the sub-assemblies are and how they're put together, as well as the top level assembly and the quantities. So you notice for a lot of these, they have a green 0. That's because those are auto-calculated for you. So say I come in here and say this is going to be $20, this one's going to be $30, and so on. You see it's adding up. If I go down to that pack nut here, which is 2 of those, I'll just say it's $10. You notice in its sub-assembly, it's $20. The next sub-assembly up, because this one is in that, is 20, and so on, and it keeps totaling up to the top. At any point, I can overwrite one of these. So on this one, if I want to put in my own number, I can put in 300. And you notice it uses that in the other calculations, but it's also marked as red to let you know that it's overridden. If you want to get it back to auto-calculated, you just remove the value and it will auto-calculate. So again, we've got this grid view, which is kind of cool. I can see all of my parts that are in the assembly. I can see all the sub-assemblies. I can look at the flat list view. I can make edits here. I can go to the bill of material view, start to see auto sums on particular numeric variables. But, as everybody knows, this is kind of a difficult view to really understand the hierarchy of this assembly and the actual structure. So I have a tree view here. And if I expand all on this, you see it comes out to this nice view that really shows you how this assembly is put together. I can scroll around, I can collapse different parts of it if I want. Expand them again, expand all. So a much better view to really understand how this thing was put together and what relates to what, than trying to figure that out in this indented view. The problem,
Bill, I think this is something that we're missing, that we really need. And if you go to the public and you open up somebody else's stuff, it takes an hour just to figure out how it's put together.
It does.
And your tree.
Something like this really helps. But the problem I always had was, you look at this view, right, and it's very tall, so I'm scrolling up and down. I can't really see everything at once. I go to a tree view, and a lot of times these hierarchies are not very deep. So these tend to be very wide. So if I'm going to get in there, I'm kind of scrolling around like this. I'm kind of scrolling left to right, where in this one I'm scrolling up and down. So I wanted to come up with even a better way that would take a better advantage of the screen real estate. So I came up with this node view. This node view also is showing you the hierarchy, just in a more radial format than linear. And as you hover over things, you see the little dashed line, it tells you where it's going to. If you hover over any one of these, it shows you what the connections are, just so it kind of highlights out. What else is really cool with this view, though, is I can say, well, geez, I really want this screw here to be near the other screw. I just kind of pull it over there. And
it's pretty cool.
Maybe I want to put this over on this side. And of course, you can collapse things here too to simplify it. and collapse them all, just go down to the main tree. Or I can
This,
expand
yeah,
them.
I love this build. This is just amazing.
Pretty
I
cool.
think old guys are going to have a little bit bigger problem with this because we're so used to having the tree, but this is definitely modern and a much better way to see the stuff and
It takes
how
a-
it's actually
takes-
represented.
It takes more advantage of the screen. I mean, if you look how easily you can read everything here versus here, I still do like this view a lot. And you know what? We all have wide screens, so let's be fair. If this is taking up the whole screen and I zoom fit, hey, that's a pretty nice looking view, and I probably would prefer this one. If I go to the node view and zoom fit here, yeah, it's still probably a little bit more legible, but I would probably take this view. But some of these, you know, when they get really wide, even for a widescreen format, you know, something like the node view is a good secondary option. So,
Hey, Bill,
yes.
I got a couple questions for you. This is Theo. Have you considered integrating drawings into this view to show associated drawings with assemblies?
Yes, it's on the list. So this you'll notice as you go through here, there's plenty of things that I could really put in here to enhance this. My goal was for the Rev 1 product to keep it as simple as possible, try to solve the things that I found to be issues for me, and then grow it from there with feedback from the community. And that's kind of the way I did it with PDMWorks many years ago too, which was quite successful. Was rather than just load it with all the features I wanted, I put in kind of the MVP features and then grew it from there. Because if you once you put a feature in, it's very difficult to take it out, and then you have feature bloat and the product just becomes very difficult to use. But yes, I do have a whole laundry list of things I would like to put in here. Another cool thing I want to show you here is filtering. So I can turn filtering on and say I want to look for things with BE. So there's 2 bearings. I already showed you editing. Just looking at my notes here to make sure I don't forget anything. Oh yeah, so again, looking at the breadcrumbs here, right? We're in recent documents, Elma's engine assembly. I'm going to go back to recent documents, and I'm going to go on a part. So this time, instead of drilling into an assembly, which there aren't any in this document, I'm going to drill down into a part. And what this is going to give me is all of the versions of that part. Now, it's not breaking them down right now into revisions. That's something that's coming, but it's just showing the high-level versions. And this is kind of cool. If you have a lot of versions, you can kind of sit here and look at a whole timeline on how this thing was put together. Again, walking into a part that somebody else created, trying to figure out how they created it and what the design intent was is kind of difficult, I think, without something like this. And we even have this nice morphing view here where you can kind of just drag it and watch it change right in front of your eyes.
Yeah, we'd call that a design history file, all with the slider. I mean, that's great. The evolution of your product, how did it get there?
Yep. So, you know, and again, this view can be a list or a grid just like everything else. And anytime you're in a list view, you do have the filtering, which is cool.
Just on that, Bill, can I ask a question?
Sure.
So does that have to be actual versions that are done in the tree, or can you actually pick up the micro versions where the parts changed?
No, it's actually the versions when you stamp it as a version.
Yeah.
Yep.
It'd be cool if you could get to the micro versions and then you could watch the part. Yeah.
That would be really cool. I'm going to write that down. I'm not sure if I have access to that through the API, but that is a cool idea. So
I would guess you do. There's nothing special about a version. A version is just a label on a micro version. So
Yeah.
This is just a great visualization as to what's going on.
Yeah,
I can't remember what I did last month, so this is something that I'm really looking forward to using.
Yeah, there's no doubt I've been excited to get Bill to be able to start showing this to people. So
This is pretty cool for, if you've got a larger team where you have a manager who's deciding who works on what, it's pretty easy for that manager to come in here every day and start assigning tasks to people. And the manager can even look at these thumbnails. Now, granted, they're small, but can even look at these thumbnails to kind of get an idea of what's going on, because the thumbnails update as the document updates as well.
That beats just looking at a list of names, trying to figure out what's going on. Most managers kind of know what I'm doing, so that's just having the image there is nice.
plus, I think even a lot of this, just think of using this is one of those cases where mobile is going to be really kind of valuable too, I assume, because I can totally see people on their mobile platform wanting to do a lot of these kinds of things.
And this view right here has this cool filter where I can say, just show me my stuff. Or maybe I want to see unassigned because I've had some free time, so let me see what's isn't assigned to anybody else, and I can maybe grab that one. Or if I want to see what's assigned to a particular user. So just nice and clean and simple. Doesn't do everything in the world, but I think it does the majority of what people need to get their work done.
Yeah, I really like it, Bill. I think you're off to a great start. So I got to do an introduction for you, Bruce. We go back a long, long time from the very beginning. And I've always been really impressed with Bruce and his ability to put the structure together and understand it. I've always been trying to keep up with him. And I'm really looking forward to what you have to say tonight, Bruce, because I want to see how you put your stuff together. Take it away, my friend.
Okay, so well, thanks for inviting me along, Bill, and hopefully I can share some of my projects. You showed some pretty good stuff there, and also sometimes it's I try to put it together a good project, but every time you put together one, you sort of always like, next time I'm going to do something differently. So I've chosen one to show you now.
It does evolve. It always gets better.
Yeah, it certainly does, and especially with Onshape too. As Onshape evolves, your thinking changes. This is a project that I thought would be a good project to just sort of start with. First up, it's one that the structure come together pretty well, and there was actually a few different people working on this project, and we set it up from scratch. So it was sort of from scratch. We got it set up reasonably well, and we different people went off and worked on different parts of the project. So as you were working through your list there before, Bill, there was some of the little pet peeves. I think I've covered that. So the first one is I've got like a top assembly as my first tab. And I've actually pretty sure that I've selected that as a document thumbnail. So I'll get a tick on that one. So basically I've chosen this as the top level assembly. Theoretically, if anybody goes into the document, you'd think that the first one, if they're going to look at it, they generally I look at the first tab, and I think that's what most people do. I tend to always have the tab manager open. I don't know why. It's probably because I've got, like with a wide screen, it's not using up too much screen real estate to have it open, and I constantly use it. And certainly on this project, it was structured with a lot of folders and a lot of tabs. So you scrolling along the bottom of the screen would be very difficult. Just while we're here in this top level document, it's been pretty good we've managed to use Onshape configurations, and you can do a little bit of stuff here, like for example, this panel on the top, we can use configurations to put that up and down. I think that's pretty cool. So I can drop that down and lift it back up. Another thing that we've got, and this will be interesting to see if this works. I'm pretty confident with Onshape mates, but what we've set it up so you can actually have the front wheels turn. So if I go full lot to the left, the configuration should actually drive the actuator to steer the wheels. And generally, the mates are so robust, with your robots and stuff that you were showing earlier on, that you can actually do this kind of stuff. In previous life, my top level assemblies used to tend to fall apart with mates for whatever reasons. Or the other thing that was quite complicated too is you had to have a massive configuration table to drive anything, and it just got out of control. But I find with Onshape you can just really do these simple configurations where you're stacking the configurations up, so you've got multiple configurations per part, and you don't have to have those massive tables, which is really cool. So I'll turn the wheels back to straight here, just so that it's back in its original position. And I've also I've got a lot of tick boxes. I tend to use these tick boxes for just turning stuff on and off. So I can, for example, I've got an Ergo Man that I can turn on. And there's a couple of them that show up on here. And I've got crates that go on the actual machine, so I can turn the crates on. And it just really makes it quite easy for people coming in. They can actually, I do have to show them what to do, but you can actually do a bit of a presentation, even if you're not CAD literate, just by turning stuff on and off here, which is quite good. I've got some pull-out trays here. That's why these trays are floating in space. So if I pull out those trays, if I tick that there, that should fly the little side trays out. So Bill, interrupt me if I'm going over time or whatever. I don't want to waste too much time on this top assembly, but really just look at my structure of my document. So, like I said, this document started from scratch, and I started, as pretty much all documents, it started in the Part Studio, and I laid it out with a top level, what did I call it here? It's not even spelt right. A top level design.
A layout sketch.
Layout sketch, yeah, yes. So I'll just let that load up. Apologise for my internet. I've been having a few troubles with my internet over the last couple of weeks, and I think I'm just scraping through today. So if it's a little bit slow, that'll be why. So this is just a top level sketch. I had to put front on here. That was because I had a couple of different guys working on this, and it was just getting a little bit confusing as to which direction the machine was going. So I just typed that in there as just as an indication, and that was really just giving the overall layout. What I tend to find with a project like this one, you start, and I keep coming back to this sketch and keep changing it, keep editing it, and when I want to add something new to the product, like if there was a new feature that we had to add on, I would try and put even if it was just a simple a couple of lines, but those lines can be reference points to go into other documents. And so basically, just during the project, like just working out the swinging of the wheels and the positioning of some of the boxes and all that. That's just evolved as the project's evolved, and we'll come in here and edit this top layout sketch. And what I found I put all my basically I make a folder from all my part studios, and I put all the part studios into that folder. And I'll just go through later on some of the structure that we've got here on the actual folder structure. But basically, if I go into the next level, so that was my top level. The next level down, which is which is the part studio for the wheels. That was, so that basically deriving, at this point, there was no in context or anything. So I've derived sketches from the top level into the next level down.
This is how Bradley's going to be
sometimes
doing it. Hey, Bruce, this is how Bradley does it too, is he's deriving these sketches from one to the other. And it's great.
Yeah. So as you see this load up, I didn't actually, so with this project, I actually didn't do, it's telling me this, I've got performance problems, but we'll keep moving on. With this project, I actually didn't do this design. So I did the top layout, and then I palmed it off to somebody else to do the design. And ideally, if it had been me doing it, I wouldn't have made this so big. I would have broken it down. Unfortunately, he got too far ahead of me before it actually created more part studios, and we ended up with this was probably too big a part studio. But as long as it's got 400 features, I try to keep the part studios under 200 features if I can. But basically, so the first one, I always try and keep the derives to the top. So if you add extra derives in, you can actually, if it's coming from the same part studio, you can actually edit the derive, and then add more sketches in rather than creating multiple derives. And also, once you get towards the end of the project, you'll see that this is actually being versioned back. So it's actually linking back to a previous version. If you get too many derives and you're pulling, it's trying to rebuild the whole document over and over every time you come in with multiple levels of information coming in, it gets very slow. So as soon as you're locked in on a design, you peg your derive into a version, it'll actually speed your document up a lot. So that's a little tip. In context, I've actually got some in context on this as well. It was interesting in Bill's comment about in context, people not liking them. I do like in context, but I do understand that in context, you've got to know how it works, because you can't. So if, for example, if you want stuff to rebuild and update, you can't use in context because it's locked back to a previous version, and it becomes very hard to do that. But it also is it's very robust though when you do use it in context. And I can't even remember what I turned on here, so if I'll turn this last one on. I'd say what we did with the in context, we had to add something in, and so we dropped it. No, it's not even working.
I'd be willing to bet how many people even know how in context works with Onshape, or how is it different than SolidWorks? Maybe is a better question. With external references versus in context.
Yeah, when I stumble managing my context, and I'm keeping them fewer and fewer all the time, mainly because I get these ones that should just be deleted, and I do delete a lot of them. So, I'm trying to put this together myself.
But they use the word context, and Bruce mentioned it, because unlike, I just got to reference how I've seen other systems do it. So unlike SolidWorks, when you do an external reference, right, when the assembly updates, everything just updates, right? So if you build one part off of the other and you use an edge, if you move that part with a mate, the part that's built off those edges also updates, and then it could really screw, you have this cascading effect where all your parts can kind of all fall apart, right? Because they were assuming that they were built in a certain orientation, right? So what in context does in Onshape is that when you build it, you're building those relationships from one part to another, but it's in that context of where those mates were at that location too. So you have a lot more control over exactly when. So you can have some parts where you can build multiple contexts where a single part is referencing other parts of the assemblies in different locations at different points in time. I mean, it's really cool, and it's really complex at the same time.
Yeah. And that's where you've got to really get your head around how the in context works, and I still struggle a little bit. Like for example, this context. So this has got a context here, but it was done. It was a very early, like I just loaded it up. I don't know if I even did this context. It might have been somebody else that's done it. It's a very early one because you can see that the design was very basic. So now I'm looking here at where in context are actually being used, and I can't see it. I think you could actually, like Bill said, you could delete that context. I don't think it actually does anything in this part studio. But as I'm sliding through, if anybody is using in context and you want to know what parts of or what features have been used in context, you'll see the little arrow. So as I was sliding down, I saw one that was definitely in context, which makes sense to me. So that one there, where was it? No. So this one, just wait. So this sheet metal part here, and that's definitely been created by an in context because it's got the arrow out the side here. So if I click on that in context there, click on the arrow, it opens up. That actually opens up the feature. But this is where I get a little bit fuzzy about. I'm not sure. I think you can actually show which. So it actually turns that in context on. But basically what that in context would be doing would be, it'd be using the assembly to be able to get a mirrored part onto this side is what I do.
Right mouse, you want a right mouse button on it, right? For the in context menu. Isn't that what you're trying to do? Or no?
Is that what I was trying to do? Yep.
Yeah, if you do right mouse button, you'll have an edit context, right? So you have edit sketch. And of course, I'm full of crap. All right. Yeah. Our UI needs to get better on that.
I suppose I use it in two ways. One other way that I would use it is if I've got a lot of parts that are already designed. Sometimes I'll create an assembly and then create an in context to start a new part studio, and then just using that as my base, knowing that they're all parts. And then when I create the other assembly, I know that I've got stuff positioned correctly, and then I can put parts in, like the existing parts, if that makes sense. So yeah, we probably diverged a little bit into in context, but basically, yeah, I was just going to.
That's my fault. Sorry.
No, that's all right. That's all right. So I'll click onto my next part studio. One thing I was actually thinking about this document is I had these levels, and I didn't actually do it. It was the other guy that I was working with. He actually put the 1, 2, 3. So he's actually numbered the part studios. And I was thinking it would be cool in other projects is actually you could actually put a 1 point. So that could be your top level could be 1, and then you could go 1.1, 1.2 to indicate the levels. Which I reckon that could be helpful because then you know that level 1 is going to be derived in level 2, and level 2 is that's where your work takes place. Because sometimes people can get confused and they can actually start building stuff out in your top level. So yeah, which you don't really want to have too much stuff building the top level because otherwise
it'd be nice to have a tree display so you can see the indentation and what layer are you actually working in.
Yes, that would be nice. Yeah. So
you seen that before?
Yeah. And as I've gone down, I've probably got. So for example, here we ended up putting a scale on this machine, and that was designed. For some reason, it ended up being designed in this project in this document. I think that I would actually, what I'll do before we do any changes on this, I think that I can actually move out into its own document. And I found that I'm trying to actually make this document's quite big. I'm trying to make my documents smaller. I don't find it easy to make documents smaller, but I'm trying to break them down. So, if there's something that can be independent rather than building it in this document, I might start it in this document, but I'll break it out into its own document as soon as I can. Having said
I
that,
think everything's going to start in one document, and it's going to get big. And when things become stabilized, you want to move them out.
you break them out. Yeah. So I think this one here is at its point where it could break out, but in the conceptual stages, it's really good to have it in that document, because then you're not chasing links all the time. Chasing
I
update.
totally agree. I've even tried putting them back so I could make changes to them.
And I've done that as well on projects. I've broken stuff apart and I've put it all back together again. And it's incredible. Actually, I find Onshape incredible how you can break stuff apart and put it back together, and it seems to just work.
Yeah. I don't know that that's a good workflow, but it's good to be able to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So I've got all my part studios there in that folder. What I do is in this project I've structured it as a sort of I've numbered it out, and then I've created folders, and what we do is in each sort of folder is a sub-assembly, and then the top level part will be, so for example, this is the base of the product here. That'll be quite a big assembly, and then as the assembly structure goes down, and this is all a lot of manually dragging and dropping to keep it updated. So there'll be the structure as you drill into the structure, it actually will go into each sub assembly as we go down. Yeah, so we're starting at dash 100. For some reason, there's another. Oh, okay. So he's created another. He's created another folder there for just the sub parts. That must have been to get them out of the actual main one. And I think even we might have folders inside folders, so it just keeps going down depending on how the sub assembly structure works. So yeah, it's a bit of a pain having to drag and drop all that. Like that is really annoying, but it can be done with the tab manager. But you would never attempt to do that along the bottom.
No. Have you ever thought about using properties to organize instead of a folder? So basically you can right mouse click on it, change a property and call it the 2000 or 210-100 and use properties to identify these as opposed to folders.
So I suppose the only reason I use folders is so you can collapse. I think this is
you can group them together.
Yeah, so you can collapse stuff and basically build your tree or your product structure, which is what Bill was doing in the last presentation. It's just his is going to be an automated way of doing it, and this way it's just utilizing that tab manager to do it. I don't know if it's ideal, but it's just a way of actually doing it.
Way of organizing what you're doing.
Organizing, yeah. And I have played with projects where like your drawings, actually putting the drawings. I've played with projects where this part here would actually be into its own document, and then the actual
But then you go change a word and you got to do a version.
Yes. And
I like keeping my documents with the actual part studios or assemblies too.
Yeah. And I think it sort of makes sense. So I'll have it, like, for example, that one, this is just the steering mechanisms. It gives you this will give you the assembly. And then there's the top level assembly. And then there's just the sub parts, and it's all grouped together. What what I have done in the past is I've actually, in some projects, I've actually created those drawings. So these individual drawings would be on a single drawing, which is nice. But for some reason, I've got myself into now making individual drawings rather than actually adding the drawings to the top sheet. I still, yeah. I just wish that there was some way of actually finding drawings by searching, drilling into the drawing sheets to actually find drawings. I didn't have to do them individually. That would be nice, but we're not there yet, I don't think, unless somebody can tell me the way of doing it.
Well, if
Not
you're
without
trying to
opening
do
it.
a PDF of this output, you have to output 4 PDFs, and
Yeah.
I'm too lazy. If you do them in
Yeah,
multiple
that's
sheets,
hard work. Yeah.
there needs to be a routine that'll print all those out for you.
Yes, yeah. And actually, I think Morgan's done something. Morgan Bartlett, who you mentioned before, Bill, that does all the fantastic feature script. He's developed something that can export basically scan through a drawing, scan for a document, and export all the drawings as PDFs.
Yeah, you have to hook me up with that.
So
You have to point me to that direction because I could use that.
Yeah. So it's definitely Morgan had done that. Yeah, he's on the forum. He's on the forum there all the time. So this is basically how I structure my documents. It seems to work all right, and it's similar to that one of Chris that you were showing, one of Chris's documents, Bill, and I think he does a very similar thing. Was that Chris Humphreys? Is that whose document that was?
I don't know. His last name didn't appear on any of the information.
CJH, isn't it? Is it CJH?
I can't tell you, my friend.
I think he's from Australia as well. I think he's from Brisbane.
Oh, really? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Doesn't tell you where they're from.
No. And then I have an import, so all your imported parts, I've just got a folder that I do for that. Because this is sort of an individual project for a guy for another company, I would probably tend to not create my I wouldn't create a catalog catalog for this. I just imported or not. Maybe I would say a harvest aid components.
Right.
At the moment, I think everything's still sitting in this folder. But if I want to clean this document up, I'll probably take those imported parts out and put them in their own documents at some stage.
Right.
What about?
Can you open up your version history?
Yeah, for sure. That's what I was just thinking. So this one was actually using revision management as well. So you'll see there's a lot of versions on this one. So I think you'll find we're probably up to 100 odd versions, I'd say. So 169 versions.
Wow.
So obviously each of those triangles is a release, and so I'm doing releases of all the parts that have been manufactured that have actually been released on this product. And then the drawings, I believe the drawings have been released as well. And so I didn't do the drawing. I didn't actually do the modeling. I fixed a lot of the modeling up, but I didn't actually do the modeling. But I did all the releasing of the drawings, which was pretty painful. But at least.
What's it like working with a bunch of people on something? Can you control it? Do you know?
Kind of. I tend to. No, it's not too bad. But the guy that I like, so I had my main guy that does CAD for me. He and that's all subcontractors. He's done many projects with me, so he knows. I think he understands the way I want him to work, and that's pretty good. So he's done the main of the work on this. And I'll probably annoy that annoy the heck out of him because I actually go and fix stuff up and delete stuff and, and rearrange stuff and move stuff around. But he seems to deal with that.
That's collaboration. That's where it's
that is,
all at.
Yeah. And then I'll go and I'll completely change the design and stuff and change the shape of it and everything. But I also try to give him a fair bit of leeway himself, and he comes up with ideas himself, which is great. So I think we work pretty well together. And I had a couple of interns come in on this project as well, and the interns that supposedly know how to use CAD, they just don't. Really, they
can draw something that looks right, but the structure's not there.
What I did with the interns, I branched, and you probably see branches down here. I might have deleted them, but I branched. Oh no, what would be up further? So there was a brake system that I wanted one of the interns to design, and I got him to did a branch for him, and he did all his work on the branch, and that it went too far. Like if you branch, you kind of got to merge it back in, and it got too far away, and we ended up deleting it because we just couldn't use what he'd even done.
Yeah, it wouldn't go back.
Yeah, it just wouldn't go back, and he'd made changes to other stuff, and So you got to be with your branching and merging. You've got to take it. Don't get too far ahead of yourself on a branch, I suppose, is what I'm trying to say. Otherwise, you won't.
If you branch, do you plan on it going back? Do you branch and merge?
So yeah, I do. So what I tend to do with branches now, I branch. So I try to do a branch, and it'd be like a short sprint on a branch.
Yeah, right.
And I'll investigate like ideas or whatever. If it's not going to work, I delete it, or I'll just leave it, or ideally delete it, or just leave it. Or sometimes I'll version it and then prune it off so you can't actually add anything else to it. I find that's actually a good practice. I haven't done it on this document, but you can version your branch and then prune it so you don't actually go, because what tends to happen, you can accidentally get on a branch and start working away and thinking you're on the main, and all of a sudden you've got all this work and you've got somebody else working that's on the main, and you can't get it back together. Yeah,
you can't remember what it was. And I'll prune them too, meaning that, hey, this was a bad idea, just don't go on with that. You can always reactivate them.
Yeah. And I don't think there's a lot of branches on this one. If I go down here, so that one there, we ended up sort of releasing on the branch there. I think the releases were okay on the branch, but then that's what I mean by pruning. So you get to the top of that and then you prune it off.
Yeah, I do that all the time.
Yeah, and I think that was actually accidentally. That should have been back on the main. I think it was accidentally released in the branch, but it looks like that's still. Yeah, it still looks like that's still live. That stuff. We come right down here. No, so we've got that one. Where's that one go? That one goes right to the top. Oh, so that would have been just investigating something really, really, just to see something that we've done way back here.
And
so it's just. That's a branch that's been created to just investigate the document at some stage, I'd say.
Yeah.
So that one can go.
You don't need to delete it right now.
Naming the branches is really helpful too, with the actual purpose of the exploration. That's how we've been using it.
Yeah, definitely.
A bit like all about.
Yeah, that's one thing that I don't do well is naming. Like I tend to do stuff and I should name it and I don't, and then it ends up costing you more time down the track.
Trying to figure it out. This is a pretty extensive document. I mean, there's a lot to it. It's just a skid with some steering mechanisms in it, but wow, there's a lot of work that went into this.
Yes, yeah, exactly, and that's where when you're using the release management, you kind of got to release bit by bit. So you kind of like sometimes like you'll release stuff and it might take 4 releases to get it right, and I haven't, which is can be frustrating. But I see now that Onshape, and I haven't actually used it yet, but you can actually go and edit a version, so you can actually I'm not sure how it works, so but I see with the latest release, you can actually do an edit. I don't know if Joe can fill us in more on that or not.
Yeah.
No, I mean you can. I thought it was something. If you have a version, I don't know. I'm not the right
I
guy
think
to ask.
I think you can re-release under the same.
You can re-release. I was
revision.
going to say you can.
Yeah,
it's
you
not a version. You
re-release
can.
with the
It's a
same
release,
number.
right?
You can
re-release.
use A if you used A, for example.
If you rejected it,
Yeah.
you can reuse the number of the name.
Yeah, if you
but-
reject it.
Okay, yeah. So I haven't done that, but yeah, obviously you're still going to have your version tree still going to be stacking
Yeah.
up with version. You can actually use you don't have to redo. Because it's a pain. Because I almost had to do versions where I was going to like create A.1, A.28. So I think it solves that issue. So you can just
Sub-releases.
rev stacking, I suppose it would be.
I don't know why it is, but whenever I release something, I always wish I hadn't, because I always remember, the color's wrong or something insignificant.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad of that. I'm glad it's not just me that always finds spelling mistakes or like dimensions that like you release a drawing to manufacture and then the next thing they're like, oh, where's the dimension? Oh, yeah, that one should be on there.
Yeah, I know.
You got to add, and then you got to do another version to get that extra dimension on. So so those things will be great if we don't have to actually do that. So this is another project that I've done. This one was one that I did myself. I didn't have anybody on it, but it's basically got the same structure that with folders and drawings within the folders. So actually that's a top level. So 000 is top level. So I've actually got a folder for the top level parts, the drawings for top level.
There you
parts.
go. Okay.
That they'll be just like pins and stuff that don't, that are actually in that top level assembly. So this is like a little welded, fabricated part, and all the drawings are there. I'm really looking forward to the day when Onshape can actually, so I can actually right click and go find drawing, and it'll find the drawing for that particular part. That'll be great. I'm sure they're going to get there eventually, but not yet.
I think that's in the API. Bill Dole, he could do that. He could link those up.
I'll check.
Link the drawings to the parts, yes. So basically I've done the same structure here, and I will have some part studios. So that's the different part studios that I was used to create this component. And if I come back, what I can do, if we come back to the top level sketch, the top level assembly, sometimes I'll drop my original sketches in, and I thought I actually had a configuration here to be able to turn that on, but I don't.
Training sketches on. There they are.
Yeah, so it's just a way of checking, checking where stuff's positioning, or how you to make sure your assembly is related to the original design.
Well, the thing that I would like, Bruce, is if I open this up at the top level assembly, you have no idea what it's supposed to do. But if you expose a sketch, a simple layout sketch with what it's supposed to do, it's a lot easier trying to figure this stuff out. I like the idea that you put the sketch in there. Yeah,
and I suppose that's what I always used to do in SolidWorks is have sketches. But the sketches, I'm actually, because I don't use SolidWorks anymore, so I'm kind of forgetting SolidWorks. But I think SolidWorks was more like you did the sketch in, like that was your layout sketch. You had to do it in the assembly, so it was kind of always there. Whereas Onshape, you have to do it in the part studio.
Part studio,
but it's nice to be able to drop it into the assembly.
Yeah.
The trick in SolidWorks, you create a layout part and then as your start part, right? But you only get one shot at it. And if you screwed it up, you're screwed because every part had a copy. You have to copy it each time as your start part. So that was another trick. But
So it's different. And kind of like, yeah, I like the way that Onshape works now. Like I just wouldn't go back.
Yeah, amen, brother. Hey, we're getting pretty close. You have any closing thoughts, Bruce?
Yeah, so I don't know. Yeah, I suppose. It really comes down to trying to figure out a structure. I suppose what suits you and what suits your business and how many people you've got working in it and how the projects are going to work. But like there's a incredible amount of flexibility to be able to do. Like I suppose these products are pretty medium scale. Like they're not simple things that like there's hundreds of hours that go into building these, building hundreds and hundreds of hours of CAD that go into building these things. And Onshape definitely has a way to structure it that you can come back and find stuff. Yeah.
Are you still trying to figure stuff out?
I'm still trying to figure stuff out, and every time I do a project, it's like, okay, well, I need to do this.
It gets a little better every time, doesn't it?
Yeah, yes.
I'm in the same mode.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions for Bruce?
All right, so you see my screen?
Yeah.
All right, so where I was going would be, this is Bill, and Bill's going to talk about 1IPM, so I won't steal his thunder. Let's see, so superlearner. And like I said, this is kind of goes through and it's really doing a surface plot of all the different variables, and it comes up like in this case we wanted a bottle to be 5 liters, but we had a bunch of different parameters that we can vary. Simple example, but it's a case of this is what a lot of times these examples you might think that you can come up with the answer in your head, but the idea of just doing this in the cloud is so cool. So you can just let this thing crank along and you're not doing anything, it doesn't impact you at all. You can let this thing run and go back and continue to model, because it's working on configurations. I don't know how much everybody understands how our configurations work, but because it was using all the different variables in a configuration, it's not affecting your model. Configurations are something that, I don't know what the right term is, but they can all change, but they're not changing the model you're in. They're affecting the configuration. So, but on scale. So I think the interesting thing about on scale is if you look at it initially, you'll say, well, it looks like another analysis product, which it is. You can see it will do thermal, it will do all your basics. It's starting off from a different pedigree than most, so it's coming out of the Apple and companies like that, or maybe customers. I didn't say that, but it comes out of that side of the thing. So it was very electrical oriented with heat and stuff like this, but it's now adding all the standard things, which we call multi-physics. Okay, so long story short, you can combine all the parameters in Onshape. You can combine stress analysis and CFD and thermal and use all those at the same time, and it will do design sweeps to come up with the best values of all those, right? I mean, you said optimization, so that's what I'm thinking when you say that, right? And I'm not sure, the word can mean different things to different people, Bill, so I may not have answered your question exactly.
This is perfect, Joe.
Well, there's also generative design, right? And so generative, what you will see from Onshape, and it will be, this has been talked about publicly, so it's not like it's exact secret. When and how will be different, but PTC has acquired a company called Frustum quite a while ago, like 2 years ago. They used to be an app for Onshape actually, but Frustum is generative design. And does everybody know what generative design is? Yeah, or actually, okay, so what is the best way to show generative design? I'm gonna show a different product because I don't have a product that matters. It's kind of probably not right of me to show their product, but that's a generative design part, right? You wind up, it looks like an organic, something that was grown or something that in nature were grown out of nature, right? Kind of an organic shape. And in the human body is a good example of generative design. Your bones over evolution have figured out where the mass should be and where it shouldn't be, right? And so nature has always been doing this type of thing. And you get these really weird shapes, but the reason why these weird shapes are this way is because the computer figured out where do you really need material and where don't you, and so it will come up. It's certainly a topic that we could talk about for hours. Okay, but the point is, there's a lot of products that will do different things, and some of them will even do the lattice structure that's on the inside, like these kinds of things, so you can lighten the part up. But they're all about minimizing the amount of material, making the best part possible. Where these things start to get a little difficult is how are you going to manufacture that, right? I mean, that's the first thing I would ever look at. I see these parts and I go, well, yeah, that's probably the best possible part you can make. That won't break, it'll weigh the least amount, but how in God's name am I going to make that? So, in a lot of ways, the way they do this, you're right. So you have this best part possible, but the manufacturing here, they're basically assuming you have a 3D printer. A 3D printing manufacturing process can create a part like this, but we're not all using 3D printing, and it's still kind of whether or not you can use it in your design. There's also another aspect, to be honest, is do you even like the way the part looks? I think that's another topic that will be interesting over time, what people think as this generative design comes up. But anyway, sorry, the term generative design means the computer generates the shape. That's probably the simple way to look at it. Now, what Richard was talking about, and by the way, I only comment on Richard because of that beard, man. So I haven't seen you with the beard.
The hair too, huh?
True. You got your COVID hair and beard
Yep.
and hair. Where I think this stuff becomes really practical or more widely used is, let's say you're doing CNC, so you only have a 3-axis machine. Well, what you will be able to do is, instead of having this part that's got undercuts and things that you couldn't really cut with a milling machine, they will have goals. So you'll be able to give it a manufacturing process, and it will give you a shape that's still kind of optimized this way, but it won't have undercut. So it'll start to look more and more. You can go all the way from a 2.5 axis all the way to a 5-axis manufacturing process. I've even seen some talk about, or I've seen some products that will do stylized design. So they'll use this to try to make the part look cool, if the computer can figure it out. Anyway, long story short is what this stuff does, and Bill, cut me off when you're the one that made the mistake of letting me talk. So,
Keep going, Joe.
Well, what this does is that, you can see it's doing stress analysis, right? You can see that's doing shapes, some really cool shapes. You can see that it's doing this ultimate design. So you're going to see all of this in Onshape, long story short. And you're also going to see, let's just say, hint that you probably will see analysis. Part of this is just as some analysis in Onshape, all right? And maybe some other types of things. So this is all in the future, so I think it's a safe bet to say that you will see a lot of this starting to pop up in our product, where appropriate. So I think OnScale does this. If you want another product that I think is just really, you're going to start to see there. I'm giving you a 2-week head start. All right, we're rolling all these out, coming out. But this one, how many know Composer? SolidWorks Composer. If it's call it Technical Pub. You can call it online instructions. You can there's no one category for it. But sorry, I'm looking at something. I don't know what the hell you're talking about. What this will do is if you're familiar with Composer, let me see if I can find some good examples of it. All right, there's some decent concepts, right? It'll author it. It will put notes on the model. Will put some hotspot on it. I'm going to massacre the description of all the things but this can say, and it's you can look at it as starting point with Onshape. So explode orientation of Onshape, but then you can add things to it. And some of these have more action. Some of them have less. I can't, on these examples, I haven't really gone through each one to tell you which is the best. It will do a lot. So I would call this a modern version of tech publication is the way to look at this. What else? I do have a company that's going to be doing some stylized surfacing. So if you're looking for a really new way of doing swoopy shapes and doing organic shapes, but not using NURBS approach, but using a different type of approach to the modeling, that's somebody else that we're working with right now. Duro just released their product, and if you haven't seen that, Duralab, or sorry, Duralab's, it's in the App Store. I could go look at the App Store entry, but it's a it's kind of going to complement Bill's topic today, but it's a PLM company, right? PLM product. So it SolidWorks, really, most of the people, a lot of people, or I'd say a good portion of people that are moving to SolidWorks or Onshape right now from SolidWorks, the reason they're doing it to a large extent is release management. It is the data management. It's the idea that not only can you do your CAD, but you have this workflow, and there's no more check-in and check-out, but you can still do a release and ECO with Onshape, and we understand what versions are. And again, another great topic for Onshape over time. But what Duro does is it completely leverages what you do in Onshape. With a release, when you do a release in Onshape, it automatically will feed into Duro, and then Duro basically feeds that data. It's kind of an ERP system, but it will take it in purchasing and management and inventory and all the other areas of the company now can also put that data in their systems and talk to it and work with it. So it goes from the engineering data management more into the classical PLM world. Yeah, I think what you like about it mostly, besides being extremely modern and new and very complementary to Onshape, is it's kind of cool. I hate to say it, but I've never thought of PLM as cool. But you watch the demo and you see it, it actually looks pretty cool. So it's a nice app. Out of the box, it's just going to make a huge enterprise. It's got thousands and thousands of engineers all working together. Now, this is probably not the product for them. I would say this is a small to medium-sized business that has needs. I think that probably is the best fit, but there's no reason. It's just that it's a very much kind of an out-of-the-box plug-and-play type of product, at least as much as you can in this world. Look, I can go on and on. So if anyone has questions, let me know. But there's always going to be new products coming out.
Hey, listen, guys, it's 7 o'clock here in California. And if there aren't any other questions, thanks for coming. Next time we're going to have Bradley Sullins here, and Onshape's going to tell us how to do it. Okay? Thank you so much, Bruce.
No problem. No, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And Bill, thanks for showing us. I think there's a lot of things that we would like to see improved.
Thank you for the opportunity.
You betcha. Good night, everybody.
Yep. No worries.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay.
Good night. Thank you,
Yeah,
guys.
Bill.
Okay. See ya.